This is going to be 34-4. We're going to be taking a look at trig graphs again. And this is almost like a continuation of 34-3. We're just going to be kind of taking a look at more problems that include this concept of phase shift and vertical shift. And so we're going to continue to identify what that phase shift is and that vertical shift. Now remember, these are our parent graphs, and so we use these images to help us graph here. And so for this one here, it says, sketch the following one full rotation. So the first phase is I need to go through and I need to describe my graph. So for example, it's sine, so I know that I have a parent graph that looks like this. And so there's my sine parent graph. I have my amplitude, it's going to be 1. The period, natural period, which is 2 pi, over my b, which is 3. And I have a vertical shift that's plus 4. So I know that my center line is going to shift up 4 spaces. And so now what I need to do is I need to take this portion of the function, I need to put that between 0 and 2 pi. So I'm going to get 0 is less than or equal to 3x minus 2 pi, which is less than or equal to 2 pi. Now the reason why it's between 0 and 2 pi, it's between 0 and your natural period. And so the natural period for sine is 2 pi, and so that's why I have that as 2 pi. So now solve for x. So I'm going to add 2 pi to everything. So I'm going to get 2 pi is less than or equal to 3x, which is less than or equal to 4 pi. Divide everything by 3. And so I'm going to get 2 pi thirds is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 4 pi thirds. And so now I can do my value box. And so that's why 2 pi thirds goes here and 4 pi thirds goes here. And so to find the middle value, if you add the ends and divide by 2, you're going to get 2 pi thirds plus 4 pi thirds. Divide that by 2, you're going to get 6 pi 6. Which means I have to scale this, so this will become 4 pi 6, and this will become 8 pi 6. Which means if I add these ends and divide by 2, this will become 5 pi 6, and this will become 7 pi 6. And so it counts up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can also now say that this right here, this is my horizontal shift, that first value in the box. And so my horizontal shift could be negative c over b, or it's just that 2 pi thirds right there. So now scaling this, I know that this is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 pi 6, 5 pi 6, 6 pi 6, 7 pi 6, and 8 pi 6. So now copying the image of my parent graph, the first value is at the center line, the second value is at the amplitude, the third value crosses the center line, fourth value goes below the amplitude, and it goes back to the center line. And there's my one full rotation. So remember, the first phase that I did here is I described the graph. And that's what all of this right here was, just spending time to describe the graph. Then I put this part of the graph here between 0 and 2 pi. That's what I did here. I had to find the values. And so step 5 and 6, I spent time finding the values, and that's what I did here. I had to find all the values. That's how I know how to label my x-axis here. And then step 8, you can graph. Just remember that we had to move the center line up, which is what I did, and you just copy the image of this parent graph here, right? So the first value is on the center line, my first value is on the center line. Second value is up at the amplitude, second value up at the amplitude. Third value it crosses, third value it crosses. Fourth value it's below, fourth value it's below. Fifth value back to the center line, back to the center line. So we haven't really practiced a tangent one, even though I basically discussed it with tangent. describing our parent graph, right? So the first 4 sections we describe. What we're going to do is my parent graph, we have dad help us, so it's dot, asymptote, dot, and it has a swivel there and a half swivel there. My amplitude for tangent is none. There is no amplitude for tangent. The period is going to be pi over b. Now, natural period for tangent's pi, and so it's going to be pi over b. And my vertical shift, it's going to shift down too. And then I want to take the inside portion of my graph, and I'm going to put that between 0 and pi. 0 and pi because the natural period is pi. So it's between 0 and the natural period. So I'm going to add pi force to everything. And so I'm going to get pi force is less than or equal to 2x, which is less than or equal to 5 pi force. Then I divide everything by 2, and I'm going to get pi eighths is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 5 pi eighths. So now doing the box dealio. Remember, tangent so now doing the box. Remember, for tangent there's only 3 values. First value goes here, last value goes here. If I add the ends and divide by 2, I'm going to get 6 pi over 8 over 2, and so that's going to, the 2 and the 3 is going to reduce, and so that's why it's going to give me 3 pi eighths. So I know I can label this. This is my 1 pi 8, 2 pi eighths, 3 pi eighths, 4 pi eighths, 5 pi eighths. My vertical shift is -2. And so following the example here with dad, that means at pi eighths, I have a dot. At 3 pi eighths, it's an asymptote. And then at 5 pi eighths is another dot. Remember, it's on the center line. And so drawing the same sketch as my parent graph, there's going to be 1 full rotation for tangent. If I wanted to graph cotangent, all you need to do is switch the dots and the asymptotes. So dad's daughter Otto will help us. So this becomes asymptote, this becomes dot, this becomes asymptote. And then what ends up happening is you just graph it in the other direction. That's cotangent. As simple as that. And then if I wanted to graph cosecant, well, the parent graph for cosecant follows this example here. Right? Well, if you notice, that looks very similar to sine, right? That's because cosecant and secant are reciprocals. So for cosecant, you pretend like it's sine. At the very end, instead of drawing the wave, where it crosses the center line, you draw asymptotes. And then at the peaks, you draw parabola-looking things. And there you go. You have your cosecant. So this is mainly just to kind of point out the difference between them and how it's not wildly crazy when we go through that. Well, I hope this answers any questions that you may have. If you continue to have questions, please leave them in the comments.